The turkey smelled just right, crispy skin, fat still crackling in the oven. Cinnamon floated in the air from the cider my daughter insisted on warming in a silver pot she'd borrowed from her neighbor. The living room glowed with Christmas lights, blinking soft and lazy against polished windows. From the outside, you'd think we were a perfect family. From the inside, well, you'll see. Presents towered under the tree. Red bows, shiny gold wrapping paper, little name tags written in my daughter's careful hand. But the real attention wasn't on the tree, it was on me. I could feel it. Their eyes kept darting to my chair at the head of the table, to the heavy envelopes beside my plate. They'd already decided how tonight would go. Their father would show up, smile that tired old smile, hand out a few checks, maybe hint at bigger things to come. Then, after the holidays, they'd corner me with papers, guardianship documents, power of attorney, maybe even a transfer of assets. They thought they were clever. I'd spent my life building homes from nothing, brick by brick, deal by deal. Did they really think I couldn't spot a blueprint for betrayal? I raised my glass. Merry Christmas. My voice cut through the chatter, quiet but heavy. Their faces twitched with impatience. They didn't care about my toast. They cared about what I was holding. My daughter, Claire, got her envelope first. Her manicured nails trembled as she tore the flap. She expected a check, maybe 50 grand, maybe more. What she pulled out instead made the color drain from her face. A neat folder, her credit card statements, her unpaid loans, every account now rerouted under my authority. "Dad, what is this?" she whispered. Her eyes darted, panicked, as if the numbers on the page might vanish if she blinked hard enough. "Your life, sweetheart," I said evenly. "The one you thought I couldn't see." My son, Matthew, went next. He ripped his envelope open with a smirk, certain his inheritance was inside. Instead, he found property records clean, notarized, showing that the house he claimed as his had been quietly retitled months ago. Back in my name, back where it belonged. He slammed the papers against the table. "This isn't legal." "You can't just, I can," I said. And I did. Finally, my son-in-law, Eric. His grin had always been the kind that belonged to a man who thought he was the smartest in the room. He opened his envelope like it was just a formality. Inside, his tax records. Fraud. Evasion. All carefully documented and already sitting in the hands of a lawyer who didn't particularly like him. Eric's smirk faltered. "Where did you get these?" "I didn't get them," I said. "You left them lying around, like breadcrumbs." I just followed the trail. The room had gone cold. No more Christmas chatter, no soft laughter. Just three faces pale with shock. I let the silence stretch until it burned. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out three small objects, fragile, old, handmade. A cardboard ornament, glued together by a child's clumsy fingers. A paper snowman, edges frayed from decades of storage. A little angel cut from yellowing construction paper. Each one had been theirs once. I set them on the table. "You used to give me these." Back when gifts meant love, not leverage. Back when family meant something more than money. Claire's hand shook as she reached for her ornament, then stopped halfway. She knew what it meant. They all did. Then came the chaos. Matthew lunged for his documents, shoving them toward the fireplace. Claire followed, desperate to erase her shame. Eric cursed under his breath, grabbing at the tax forms like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. The flames licked the paper, curling the edges into black. But I didn't move. I didn't shout. I just watched, calm as stone. Then I smiled. Those were copies. The originals are in my lawyer's safe. All you managed to burn was your last chance at dignity. Their eyes turned to me wide, cornered, like thieves caught in their own house. That's when I slid one last envelope onto the table. This one was heavier. Cream paper, embossed seal. A new will. Claire's breath hitched. Matthew's jaw clenched. Eric cursed softly. I raised my glass again. You wanted Santa with money, but this year, all he's brought you is the truth. I opened the envelope and read the single line that mattered. All assets to be transferred to the Eleanor Foundation for Children, named after their mother, my late wife. The only one who'd ever loved me without calculation. The room was silent except for the hiss of the fire and the faint ticking of the grandfather clock. Their Christmas feast had turned into a funeral for their greed. And I sat there, steady, watching them realize this house, this life, this legacy, it would never be theirs. This was the night they'd remember not as Christmas, but as judgment. And the angel on the tree, that brittle little scrap of childhood paper, glowed in the colored lights like a witness. They had killed the family. I had buried the corpse. As Claire finally broke the silence, her voice cracked, desperate. "You can't do this, Dad. We'll fight you." I leaned back, my smile colder than the December wind, then prepared to lose. Because this was just the beginning. The morning after Christmas felt colder than usual. The snow outside my window was untouched, clean, almost mocking. Inside, the silence had a different weight. No carolers, no cheer, just the lingering echo of last night's war. I made my coffee the way I always did, strong, bitter, black. The kind that burns the throat and keeps the mind sharp. My phone buzzed before the mug even cooled. Unknown number. I didn't answer. They'd start with calls, of course. Pleading, bargaining, maybe threatening. I let it ring. By noon, there were 6 missed calls from Claire. 2 from Matthew. 1 from Eric, voicemail, sharp and venomous, like a man realizing the ground beneath his feet wasn't as solid as he thought. "You can't humiliate me like that and think it ends there. You want war, old man? You've got it." I played it twice, then saved it. Evidence has a way of aging into gold if you keep it long enough. That afternoon, I drove past Matthew's house. His shiny SUV sat crooked in the driveway, snow covering half the windshield. He'd been up all night. Good. Let him stew in the reality that the roof over his head wasn't his. Claire's house was quieter. No car in the driveway, curtains drawn. Probably hiding, ashamed, wondering how much I knew about her debts. She thought her secrets lived in the shadows. I dragged them into daylight. Shadows don't survive daylight. But Eric was different. A cornered man with a law degree is like a wounded wolf. Desperate, unpredictable, dangerous. That evening, I got my first taste of his counterattack. The knock came just after dark. 3 sharp raps, the kind that weren't asking permission, they were demanding it. I opened the door to find a man in a long black coat. Not Eric, but one of his colleagues. Papers in hand. "Mr. Dalton?" His tone was polished, rehearsed. "You've been served." I took the envelope, heavy with legal ink. Inside, Eric's move. A petition challenging my mental capacity. A request for guardianship. They were going to claim I wasn't fit to manage my own affairs. That I was confused, manipulated, maybe even senile. I laughed. Right there in the man's face. He shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. His job was just delivery. Mine was war. After he left, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. Christmas crumbs still lingered there, reminders of turkey and betrayal. The petition was clever, I'll give Eric that. Medical records. Statements from supposed friends about my memory lapses. Manufactured, of course. He was laying the groundwork to strip me of control. But what he didn't know was that I'd already prepared for this exact move. Last month, before the snow, I'd sat in Dr. Raymond's office for a full evaluation. Memory, reasoning, judgment, the works. My results? Sharp as a blade. The signed, notarized assessment sat locked in my safe, stamped with the doctor's seal. Eric thought he was building a noose. What he didn't know was that I'd already greased the rope. That night, I called my attorney, Mark Hollis. A man with more gray hair than me and a taste for courtroom fights. I told him everything, last night's Secret Santa, today's guardianship papers. He chuckled low, like a man who'd just spotted a weak flank in battle. "Let them come," he said. "By the time we're done, they'll wish they'd never picked this fight." I poured another whiskey and sat in the dark living room. The only light came from the tree, its ornaments dull now except for one. That little paper angel. Its wings curled with age, its face smudged from the touch of a child's hands decades ago. They'd forgotten what it meant. But I hadn't. The phone buzzed again. This time I answered. Claire's voice cracked through the line. "Dad, please, you don't understand. He's trying to protect us." "Protect you from what?" I asked, my tone steady as stone. Silence. Then a whisper from you. I hung up before she could say more. The war had begun, and they'd just made their first mistake. The next morning, as I opened my front door, I froze. On the porch, half buried in snow, lay a torn envelope. Inside, photos. Of me, taken through my own windows. Someone had been watching. The photographs lay in my hands like ice. Grainy black and white shots, each one sharper than the last. Me sitting at the kitchen table. Me pouring a glass of whiskey by the window. Me asleep in my chair with the TV flickering in the background. Someone had been inside my yard. Close. Watching. The last photo was the worst, me unlocking the safe in my study. The one no one was supposed to know existed. Whoever took it hadn't just been snooping. They'd been planning. I closed the envelope slowly, my fingers steady though my heart was thundering. Eric. It had to be him. The man was desperate enough to risk breaking and entering. Desperate enough to make his point. You're not safe, old man. I brewed my coffee, sat down at the table, and forced myself to think. Rage is easy. Strategy is harder. Strategy wins wars. By noon, I'd made my move. I called an old friend, Detective Alan Pierce, retired but not rusty. We'd played poker once a month for years, back when I still believed family loyalty was unbreakable. Alan owed me a favor, and I knew exactly how to cash it in. He showed up that evening, trench coat dusted with snow, his eyes sharp as ever. I slid the photographs across the table. He didn't flinch. Front porch delivery? He asked. Early morning. He studied each shot, his jaw tightening. This isn't amateur work. Whoever did this knows surveillance. Angle, distance, timing, they're careful, but not careful enough. I'll run these for fingerprints. You think Eric's behind it? I asked. Alan smirked. That smug son-in-law of yours? No, he doesn't have the patience. But he's paying someone who does. I leaned back in my chair. So he's already bleeding money to dig up dirt that doesn't exist. Exactly, Alan said. And when men like him bleed, they panic. That's when they make mistakes. I liked that answer. Later that night, I decided to speed things up. If they wanted to play with shadows, I'd shine a light right back at them. I drove to Matthew's house, quiet street, half the lights out. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't knock. I slid a padded envelope through the mail slot and walked away. Inside were copies of the photographs, along with a single line typed in bold, "Your ally is watching me, but I'm watching you." By the time I returned home, I had a voicemail waiting. Matthew's voice tight shaken. "Dad, what is this? Did you hire someone too? What the hell is going on?" I smiled in the dark. Cracks were forming. Paranoia is a poison, and it spreads fast. But the real strike came 2 days later. Eric stormed into my driveway in his silver sedan, tires spitting snow. He hammered on my front door until the glass shook. When I opened it, he shoved a finger in my face. "You think you're clever?" His voice trembled with fury. "You think you can humiliate me in front of my own wife?" I let him spit, let him pace, let him burn himself down to embers. Then I said, calm and cold, "Eric, do you remember the tax files you saw in that envelope? The ones you tried to burn?" His jaw clenched. "They're already in the hands of the IRS and the State Revenue Department. So while you're wasting your money hiring strangers to photograph me through my windows, the real wolves are circling you." His face went pale. He tried to speak, but no words came. I shut the door in his silence. That night, sitting in the glow of the tree lights, I realized something. This wasn't just about defense anymore. It was time for offense. They wanted my house, my money, my legacy. Fine. I'd show them what happens when you try to rob a man who built his life from nothing. The angel ornament shimmered faintly on the tree. Watching. Waiting. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. The next morning, Alan called. His voice was low, urgent. "Bob, I traced those photographs. Your son-in-law didn't just hire some private eye. He hired someone with mob ties. And they're not here just for pictures." Alan's words clung to me like frostbite. Mob ties. That explained the precision of the photographs, the clean angles, the patience in every frame. Eric hadn't just played dirty, he dragged wolves to my doorstep. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the tree lights blinking faintly, every shadow in the house alive with suspicion. The paper angel stared down at me from the branches, wings bent, silent as judgment. By dawn, my decision was made. I wasn't going to wait for the wolves to come inside. I'd drag them into the open. Alan met me at Riverside Diner, the kind of place where the smell of bacon and burnt coffee clung to your clothes. He slid into the booth across from me, the manila folder already in his hand. "This is who Eric paid," he said, opening the file. A face stared back, sharp jaw, eyes like gunmetal, the kind of man who could blend into a crowd but still chill your blood if you caught him watching. Name: Victor Marino. Known enforcer, debt collector, occasional private investigator when clients wanted plausible deniability. "Marino's not cheap," Alan said. "If Eric hired him, he's drowning deeper than you thought. Men like Marino don't just take pictures. They collect debts. They send messages." I sipped my coffee, bitter as tar. "So Eric owes money." "Big money," Alan confirmed. "My guess? He offered you as collateral." Old man with assets. Easy pickings. Collateral. That word twisted my gut. Eric hadn't just betrayed me, he'd sold me. That evening, I set the trap. I left my study window cracked open, just enough to tempt. On the desk, I placed a thick folder labeled estate documents. Inside, nothing but newspaper clippings and old grocery lists. Bait. Then I sat in the dark, shotgun across my knees, waiting. It didn't take long. Midnight. The crunch of boots in snow. The creak of the window sliding higher. A shadow slipped inside, Marino himself, moving with the quiet grace of a predator. He reached the desk, flipped open the folder. I cocked the shotgun. The sound split the silence like thunder. "Looking for something?" My voice was steady, flat. Marino froze. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. "Easy, old man. No harm done. Wrong house for that line." His eyes flicked to the shotgun, then to me. Cold calculation. He wasn't afraid, not yet. Men like him don't fear until they bleed. "You've been paid to watch me," I said. "So tell me, was Eric dumb enough to mention my safe?" Marino smirked. "He mentioned a lot of things. That was all I needed. Proof. Here's my counteroffer," I said, lowering the barrel just enough to make him wonder. "You tell your client this. The next time he sends wolves, I'll feed them copies of every document I've got. IRS, state, feds. His name will burn so bright they'll see it from Washington." Marino studied me, weighing his options. Then, with a slow grin, he backed toward the window. "You've got stones, old man. I'll give you that. But stones don't stop bullets." And then he was gone, swallowed by the snow. The house was silent again, but not safe. I knew Marino's grin too well. It wasn't retreat. It was patience. He'd be back. The next morning, Claire showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking. "Dad, you have to stop this. Eric's losing control. He said if you don't back off, something bad will happen." I looked at her, my daughter, the little girl who once hung paper snowmen on the tree with glue still on her fingers, now trembling, begging me to surrender to the man who'd sold me out. "No, Claire," I said quietly. "Something bad has already happened. And now it's my turn." That night, I received a letter shoved under my door. No envelope. Just one line scrawled in black ink. "Next time, we don't knock." The note sat on my kitchen table, black ink bleeding into cheap paper, stark against the morning light. "Next time, we don't knock." I read it 3 times, folded it once, and slid it into my ledger. A banker's habit: document everything. Fear is a currency, and this was proof of the debt Eric had just signed with my blood. I didn't call the police. Cops write reports. Wolves don't fear reports. No, I needed something sharper. By noon, Alan called. His voice was rough, urgent. "Bob, you still sitting tight?" "Like a coiled spring," I answered. "Good, because I just heard Marino met Eric yesterday at the dockyard. Private booth, closed blinds. Guess who else was there?" "Who?" "Your son, Matthew." I gripped the phone tighter. My own boy, breaking bread with a mob enforcer. For what? To speed up my burial? Alan continued, Looked like a negotiation. From what my guy overheard, Eric promised Marino a cut of your estate. Matthew nodded along like it was gospel. My gut went cold. Claire had always been weak, Eric's pawn. But Matthew? He was supposed to be better. At least stronger. Now he was just another vulture circling my bones. That night, I paid Matthew a visit. His driveway was iced over, the porch light off, but his living room glowed faintly. I didn't knock. I walked right in. He flinched when he saw me. "Dad, you can't just save it," I snapped. I tossed a thick envelope onto his coffee table. Inside were the photos Alan had slipped me, clear shots of him with Eric and Marino at the dockyard. Matthew's face strained. How you think I don't know what betrayal looks like? My voice cut sharp, cold. "I've smelled it since the day you were born, boy. Every time you asked for more, every time you took without giving back. Now you're gambling with my life like it's poker chips." His hands trembled as he opened the envelope, the evidence undeniable. Eric said you wouldn't fight back, that you'd fold. I leaned closer, my shadow falling over him. Do I look folded? Silence stretched. He swallowed hard. "What are you going to do?" I already did it. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Then headlights swept across the living room curtains. A car pulling in. Eric's sedan. Right on schedule. I straightened, calm as stone. "Sit tight, son. Tonight, you'll see the difference between wolves and shepherds." The door banged open. Eric stormed in, snow still clinging to his shoes. Marino followed, larger, heavier, colder than I remembered. The smell of smoke and cheap cologne clung to his coat. Eric's smirk returned when he spotted me. Well, family reunion. "Cut the act," I said, my voice steady. "I know the deal you made. Estate safe, debts. You think you can buy your way out with my life." Eric spread his arms. "Why resist the inevitable, Bob? You're old. Tired. Let us handle things." Marino stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You've got something we need. Make it easy, old man." I chuckled. It wasn't forced. It was real. Funny thing about wolves. They forget one truth. Shepherds carry shotguns. From my coat, I slid the double barrel I'd cleaned that morning and laid it on Matthew's table. The room froze. Eric's smirk collapsed. Marino's hand twitched toward his jacket, but I already had the barrels angled his way. "You're not taking my house. You're not taking my name. And you're sure as hell not taking my life." My words came sharp, clipped, unshakable. Marino studied me. Then, slowly, he grinned. "You've got grit, old man. But grit doesn't stop fire." He tapped Eric's shoulder, then headed for the door. Eric hesitated, pale now, then followed. Tires screeched outside, fading into the night. I lowered the shotgun. My heart hammered, but my hands were steady. I turned to Matthew, who still sat frozen, sweat on his forehead. "You wanted to see what kind of father I really am? Now you know." The next morning, as I opened my mailbox, I froze. Inside was a charred piece of wood, blackened and stinking of gasoline. On it, carved deep with a knife, was a single word, "Next." The block of wood sat heavy in my hands, still reeking of gasoline. Next. One word, burned into the grain, a promise. They'd moved from shadows to fire. And men who use fire rarely stop at warnings. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I sat in the darkened living room with my shotgun across my knees, eyes fixed on the tree still glowing with faint Christmas lights. The angel ornament swayed slightly, caught by a draft. It looked like it was nodding at me, whispering, "Be ready." The attack came 2 nights later. I smelled it first, gasoline, sharp and acrid, seeping through the cracks of the back porch. Then the hiss of a match. I moved fast. Years may have stiffened my knees, but instinct never fades. By the time I reached the back door, the flames had licked up the porch rail, snapping hungrily at the siding. I fired once into the night, not at them, above them. The boom rolled across the yard, echoing off the snow. Shadows scattered. Footsteps crunched hard and fast, retreating into the dark. I grabbed the hose, spraying until the flames died, steam rising in angry clouds. The siding was scorched black, but the house still stood. When the fire was out, I found it. A rag, half-burned, reeking of fuel. And tucked inside, a scrap of paper. Sign the house over, or next time we don't miss. The next morning, I called Alan. His voice was tight, furious. They crossed a line, Bob. This isn't intimidation anymore. It's attempted arson. I know, I said, voice flat. Which means they're desperate. And desperate men bleed easiest when you cut their wallets. Wallets? Alan asked. I explained. While they were busy trying to burn me out of my house, I'd been busy burning down something else, their finances. Claire's debts? I'd already pulled strings with the bank. Her accounts were frozen, her credit cards cut, her loan defaults now flagged as high risk. She'd wake up to find her glamorous lifestyle reduced to dust. Matthew's house? Mine again. And I'd filed eviction papers that morning. He'd be served before the week was out. And Eric was the crown jewel. My attorney had prepared a neat little package for the IRS and State Revenue Office. Every fraudulent deduction, every undeclared dollar. The wolves he thought he controlled were about to start feeding on him. Alan whistled low. You're dismantling them piece by piece. That's the plan. That evening, I drove to Claire's condo. The place smelled of roses and perfume even from the hallway. When she opened the door, her eyes were wild, mascara smudged. Dad, they cut off my cards. My accounts are locked. I can't even buy groceries. I looked past her. Shopping bags lined the walls, designer labels flashing like neon sins. You should have thought of groceries before handbags, I said coldly. Tears welled in her eyes. This isn't fair. Neither is trying to burn your father alive. Her face twisted, guilt flashing but not holding. She didn't deny it. That was enough. Later, at Matthew's, it was worse. He opened the door with a letter already in his hand. The eviction notice. You can't do this, he hissed. My kids shouldn't be living in a house spot with lies, I cut in. You chose your bad son. Lie in it. He balled the paper in his fist, veins popping in his neck. Eric promised me. Eric promises everyone. And he delivers nothing. I left him standing in the doorway, crushed paper in his hand like a dead bird. By midnight, Eric called. His voice was pure venom. You think you can win this game? You think freezing accounts and playing with papers will stop me? You're a dead man walking. I let him finish. Then I answered, calm as ice. Funny thing about Walking Dead, Eric. We've got nothing left to lose. I hung up. The next morning, a black SUV idled across from my house. Tinted windows. Engine running. It sat there for an hour unmoving. Watching. The wolves weren't circling anymore. They were parked at my gate. The SUV stayed for 3 mornings straight. Same spot, same tinted windows, exhaust puffing in the cold air. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted me to see. Wanted me to know I was prey. But prey doesn't sit by the window polishing a shotgun with steady hands. Prey doesn't file evidence with 3 different agencies and leave duplicates with a trusted lawyer. Prey doesn't set traps. Wolves had mistaken me for lamb. That was their fatal error. Alan came by on the 4th night. His old Ford rattled into the driveway, headlights cut. He stepped inside, stomping snow off his boots, carrying a thermos of coffee and a face lined with worry. They're building up, Bob, he said without preamble. Marino's boys have been seen around town. Gas station cameras, diner booths, even near the courthouse. They're tightening the circle. Good, I said, pouring us both a drink. Let them. The closer they get, the easier it is to choke them. Alan frowned. You planning something? I slid him a folder across the table. Inside, bank records, photos, signed statements. The kind of bundle that could bury Eric, Claire, and Matthew in separate graves of debt and fraud. I don't plan, I said. I prepare. Alan read in silence, then whistled low. This is enough to ruin them forever. That's the idea. But ruining isn't enough. I want them to feel it. Every dollar, every betrayal, every night they thought I was too weak to fight back. That weekend, I moved first. I called Claire. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice brittle. Dad, please. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Just stop this madness. Come to the house, I told her. Bring Matthew. Bring Eric. We'll talk. A pause. Then a whisper. Eric won't come unless. Tell him I'll open the safe. Hook, line, sinker. Sunday night, they arrived. Claire jittery, Matthew pale, Eric swaggering like a man who thought the nightmare was finally ending. Marino wasn't far behind. I saw his SUV slide into the cul-de-sac, engine idling. Back up. Insurance. We sat at the table. The same table where this all began with turkey and cinnamon. Only now the air smelled of tension, sharp and metallic, like a storm waiting to break. Eric leaned forward, eyes locked on me. The safe, Bob. That's all this needs. You give us the deed, the accounts, and this ends. I smiled faintly. Of course. I rose slowly, crossed to the study, and returned with a thick envelope. I laid it on the table. Everything you want. Right here. Eric snatched it up, tore it open, his grin freezing as he read. Not deeds. Not bank records. Court-stamped documents. Eviction notices. Frozen accounts. IRS acknowledgments. Copies of every nail I'd driven into their coffins. Matthew's face went white. Claire covered her mouth. Eric's smirk twisted into rage. You bastard, he hissed. You think paper will stop us? I leaned back, calm, steady. Not paper. Witnesses. At that moment, Alan stepped from the kitchen doorway, voice recorder in hand, red light blinking. Marino's SUV headlights flared outside, and two sheriff cruisers slid in behind it, sirens off, quiet and merciless. Eric's face drained. Marino's eyes through the window were cold steel, calculating whether this was worth dying for. The house was silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock. I raised my glass slowly. This is my house, my life, my war. And you just lost. Marino didn't run. He stepped out of the SUV, jacket bulging with steel. The deputy shouted commands, but he kept walking straight toward my porch. And I knew the finale wouldn't be fought on paper. It would be fought in fire and blood. The deputy's flashlights cut through the dark, bouncing off the snowdrifts, their voices sharp. Hands where we can see them. Stop right there. But Marino didn't stop. His boots crunched steady on the frozen ground, each step heavier than the last. His jacket sagged at one side, no guessing what was under it. He wasn't here for negotiation. He was here to end something. I stood in the doorway, shotgun in hand, my family huddled behind me in the dining room. Claire's breath came fast and shallow. Matthew looked like a boy caught stealing candy, and Eric, always the actor, tried to keep his smirk, though sweat gleamed at his hairline. The house itself seemed to be holding its breath. The Christmas lights on the tree flickered, casting warped reflections in the window. The angel ornament swung slowly, as if it knew this was the last act. Bob. Marino's voice cut through the cold, steady as stone. You've made this harder than it had to be. The papers, the calls to the IRS, the games. All unnecessary. Funny, I called back, keeping the barrel level. I was thinking the same thing about your visit. The deputies shouted again, hands on their holsters. But Marino didn't flinch. He looked past them, straight at me. This wasn't business anymore. This was personal now. And I realized what Eric had done. He hadn't just hired Marino. He'd promised him something. My house, my land, maybe even my silence, delivered in a coffin. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I wasn't going to die tonight. Not for them. Not in my own home. I took one step forward, shotgun raised higher. Last warning, Marino. Walk away. He chuckled, deep and low. Old man, you're out of time. His hand twitched toward his coat. The world froze for half a second. Then everything snapped. The deputies shouted, lunging forward. Marino's hand came up, steel glinting under the floodlights. I didn't wait. I squeezed the trigger. The blast thundered through the night, echoing across the cul-de-sac. Marino staggered back, his pistol clattering into the snow. He dropped hard, a stain spreading across his coat. The deputies swarmed him, shouting, kicking the gun farther away, cuffing what was left of him. One called for paramedics, but from the look in their eyes, they already knew. I lowered the shotgun slowly, smoke curling from the barrel. My arms felt steady, not shaky. Not a drop of doubt in me. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. Behind me, Claire let out a choked sob. Dad, my God, I turned, and my voice was sharper than I intended. Save your tears. He wasn't here for me alone. He was here because of you. Because Eric couldn't keep his hands clean. Eric's face drained. You can't prove. I cut him off, slamming the thick folder onto the table again. Everything's already in motion. IRS, state, civil court. The sheriff's office has every file, every photo, every forged signature. I don't need to prove anything. You already did. Alan stepped closer, holding up the recorder, its red light still blinking. And now we've got your voice, Eric. Every threat, every word. Matthew crumpled into a chair, his head in his hands. Claire stared at the table, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. Eric just stood frozen, like a man realizing he'd already fallen off the cliff, the ground gone beneath him. The deputies came inside. One read Eric his rights, while another handed me paperwork for the statement. Eric sputtered, shouted, cursed, but none of it mattered. They hauled him out in cuffs, his bravado gone, his shoulders slumped. Claire tried to follow, pleading, but a deputy blocked her. Ma'am, bestie, stay put. You'll be hearing from investigators soon enough. Matthew didn't move at all, just sat there, hollow, staring at the angel on the tree. When the house was quiet again, Alan poured me a drink from the bottle I kept above the fridge. He raised it. You've buried them, Bob. Not just in court. In life. They'll never recover from this. I sipped, slow, letting the burn coat my throat. They never should have tried. I walked to the tree, fingers brushing the old paper angel. Its wings were bent, one edge singed from a long-ago candle mishap. Claire had made it when she was 5. She'd handed it to me with sticky fingers and said, "For you, Daddy. So you're never alone." I turned back, looking at the broken people sitting in my dining room. I was never alone, I said. Not even now. 2 days later, I met with my attorney. The final documents were signed, sealed, and filed. The Eleanor Foundation for Children officially existed, every dollar of my estate funneled into it. My late wife's name carved into its charter. Not a cent for my children. Not a house. Not a car. Nothing. I left the lawyer's office walking taller than I had in years. That night, I sat in my living room again. The scorch marks on the porch were gone, the siding patched. The house smelled of polish and pine. The tree was still lit, though most of the ornaments had been boxed away. Only one remained. The angel. I raised my glass one last time, whispering into the quiet. They thought Santa would bring them money. But this year, all he brought was truth. I drained the glass, leaned back, and let the silence settle. This war was over. And the last words I'd left my family with would haunt them longer than any fire, any paper, any judgment. You wanted me gone. Instead, I erased you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think.